All right, so I guess it's time to start. I'm going to assume, since you're here, that you are curious about what is not doing right in security, or what we're doing wrong, and that you all have, I assume, been in security for a little while. So, I've been doing pen testing for 15 years, cybersecurity for 21, and when I first started, I obviously was green, bought into all of the things that we all buy into. Risk, compliance, best practices, so on and so forth. If you're not familiar with Dr. Adam Grant, he is a organizational psychologist, at Wharton School, University of Pennsylvania. I heard this on a Huberman podcast one time, and it just really made a profound impact in my brain. And essentially, best practices are typically best for someone at a certain time in a certain industry, but they get adopted, spread, and I've been in pharma, healthcare, finance, most of the industries, and see how some of these don't really cross over very well. Most of the best practices are, like I said, come from an industry, they develop it, that's their best practice, it ends up getting into the market, other people adopt it rather than making one that custom fits for them, and it propagates and ends up like that. Comes from white papers, compliance templates, and random thoughts. They end up becoming standard sometimes and don't mesh the entire cybersecurity subset very well. One of the things that really impacted me was the doctor said, as soon as you say best practice, then I assume you mean you're done. You give up, because best practice might stay in place for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, but obviously, as we know, cybersecurity evolves much faster than that. Cyple's creative thinking. I was in healthcare or insurance at one time. We adopted a lot of best practices and did not fit us very well, but that's what was expected of us. So you try to involve new ideas, new ways of thinking about it. They get kind of pushed to the side because this is a best practice, this is what we're supposed to be doing. In IT in general, we have been pulled into this constant repeat, build the system, patch, rebuild, so on and so forth, until it's a nightmare, obviously. I'm not saying we shouldn't patch, however, we should not rely on patches as a first line of defense. And I'll get to why in a minute. Obviously, patches can break things. We've got, I'll get to that in a second. Blind patching, I've seen it everywhere I've been, frankly. Patches get pushed out last minute. I was at a place that patches would get pushed the night before an auditor came in the next day. And when you see, yes. Fortunately, I never saw it super impact things, but as we know from recent news over just the past year, it can have major impacts. No place that I have ever been has ever actually tested patches before they push them. Not in a lab, not in a subset of network, blanket push. You can't really patch your way to security. And, if you think about, Windows 95, Windows 2000, Windows XP, we're getting updates. And that was Microsoft's way of saying, look, I'm trying to protect you. We're making everything better. Which sounds good at the time, but they're really just fixing their screw-ups. And that's not just Microsoft, that's Apple, Android, Linux, you name it. you're better off to rely on proper controls, which patching can be a control or part of a process, but should not be the first line, which we're currently making it. It wouldn't be a talk for me if I didn't jab at Zero Trust at least once. I have complained about this for years, 3 years so far that I can recall. And one thing that they never address is patching. Just as an example, the first one here is not even a security patch. It's a system OS update. Breaks the system, resets custom baseline, resets security baselines. Some of these patches even roll back baseline configurations and don't allow the GPO to push the configurations that were meant to be in place. The third one's my favorite. It was in a bundle of patches. Microsoft has never addressed which specific KB caused the issue, but it reset the permissions on the C Windows folder and others, and it was left to the workers, the people affected, to realize that something went wrong. Obviously, when you reset something like the permissions on the C Windows folder, now you've invited a lot of risk. You can pretty much go into any AI, ask it for what patches have changed system configuration, Linux, Windows, Apple, everything. They all do it. They're all guilty. And why we should be testing them before they go out. Ideally, and it's a lot of work, but doing right security is a lot of work. You would take a subset of systems or a lab, baseline it, clear it down to the registry, the group policies, folder permissions, everything. Apply your patches, rerun the baselines, and do a differential between the two to see what's changed, to make sure that you don't end up in one of these categories. Back in definitely the 90s and some of the 2000s, if you had a web server, it was a web server. If you had a database server, it was a database server. Now we have these systems that are meant to do all kinds of things. I did a pen test one time, out of country. Their Active Directory, their domain controller, was also a database server and also check image collection server. So literally everything in their banking environment happened on one box. It was a nightmare. I'm pretty sure they didn't fix it. It was a very poor country, if that gives you anything. So I'm going to nag on Microsoft a little bit. The OS obviously is stacked full. You've got registry, the way it handles file permissions, the way it handles the registry, group policies, everything. And the more you expand an OS like that, the more attack surface you create. Look at CrowdStrike. It hooks into the OS so deeply that one circumvention can entirely shut it down and no one knows. And in a perfect world, you would get some kind of an alert, oh, it stopped working on this host or on these hosts. That apparently does not happen all over the place. So security is not about patching vulnerabilities. It's the prevention of unwanted interactions, which is anything that you can interact with. Open port, service, web app login page, API, you name it. So we have to look at the interactions. Safety, and I'm coming from the context of the OSSTMM. If you're not familiar with it, I do recommend it because I've worked on it for 21 years. But safety is controlling the interactions. So security is separating the system or the asset from the threat. Safety is about being among the threat with controls. Risk models include acceptable losses. So when you're computing risk, you're not looking, you're accepting there's something going to happen or a threshold of things that can go wrong. Where security should be addressing all the potential interaction points, all the potential issues, and we'll get to controls in a minute. Risk is dynamic, attack surface is static. I meant to use an image, but I didn't have it and didn't find it in time. But it's an image of a family walking through a nice sunset out in the open, and everything's fine. The risk there is probably fine. They're not in a war zone, they're not in a major city, they're in wilderness, woods, whatever. But their attack surface is high because they're just a family camping, whatever they're doing. If you take that same family and put them in a war zone area, now their risk is high, but their attack surface is exactly the same. Same thing if you took someone in army gear or riot gear, put them in the wilderness, their risk is low, their attack surface is the same as you put them in a war zone. You can measure security by counting the interactions, but the risk is biased. Look at the CVSS calculator. You're kind of picking and choosing by much smaller details, I guess, on, is it in an isolated zone, whatever you pick, if you've used the calculator, but you're counting the interactions. There's a set of interactions. They're either there or they're not. Of course, I've got to nag on compliance. Each compliance out there is designated and built for its specific purpose. You've got FedRAMP, you've got CNMC, you've got PCI. They are built for what they were built for. They're not built for your entire organization. They're built for protecting your payment card. They're built for protecting your cloud. But as we know, one compromised box can blow that away. PCI, I'll talk about that because I know more about it than the others. Until early last year, I think it was, 7-character alphanumeric password was fine across the board. Why? Because we had old systems out there that couldn't handle complex passwords. The proper way to handle that would have been at least stating, if your system can handle a complex password, use a complex password. If it can't, then you fit under the 7-character alphanumeric. But instead it gave it a blanket, and I've seen that abused myself very badly. True security requires measurement, interaction mapping, and fact-based models, which is where we get to the OSSTM. Compliance frameworks, like I mentioned, don't fit each other. They don't make a complete puzzle. As you can see, even the two pieces connected, while they kind of connect, there's gaps. They don't belong together. So the wrong interaction point can blow past other controls and get you into whatever they're trying to protect. In the OSSTM, we measure interactions, not vulnerabilities, because interaction is where someone can leverage a form upload, login page, API, etc. Then you want to ensure that every process or interaction point has a control wrapped around it. And we will get to the controls in a minute. So in this case, what makes up the interactions are the visibility, accesses, and trusts. So visibility is what you can see. That's your DNS resolution to the host, that's your IP that's live, so on. Access is what can be touched. That's your actual open ports on that IP. That's your login page, your document upload, anything that you can literally interact with back and forth. And then the trust is what's accepted without verification or challenge. And it's a little bit more complex than that. But when you start digging into trust, then we have 10 trust properties, which really goes off in the weeds. So So I won't get into that, but you can download the OSSTM. It's free, and it explains the 10 trust properties and how they work. So the porosity is those three together, and that's what creates your attack surface. What we need to do to better security is measure the attack surface for reductions, use quantifiable math, which is on the OSSTM or ISECOM website. There's a spreadsheet, it's a RAV calculator. Used to stand for risk assessment values. Now it just means RAV because we're trying to get away from the risk mindset. But you can plug in all of your porosity, and then you can map controls to it. And we'll get to a specific one here in a minute. But here are the 10 controls. All of these are somewhat self-explanatory. However, authentication is identity and authorization combined. If you implement all of these correctly, all the threats can be controlled. Does it mean that it can't be hacked? For example, even if you can bypass some of the active controls, you should at least have alarm so that you know when something went wrong. Now, when you're calculating the RAV, I keep saying risk assessment, just to give you some context. So a password is a +1 for authentication, but a password plus MFA is 2 for authentication. Just like a physical site, a door with a lock is a 1, but a door with a lock and a biometric is 2. So these are some examples of the controls themselves. And that's awful small print. So your authentication is passwords, MFA, tokens, RFID. Indemnification is the warning banners that you'll prosecute, do not trespass, etc. Resilience is your IDS and EDR, which help keep the machines, in this case, stable. Subjugation is your least privilege, web application firewalls. The continuity is redundant power supplies, failover, disaster recovery. Non-repudiation is your SIM, digital signatures, so that way somebody can't say they didn't do something and you have accurate records that they did, or that the system did, or whatever. Confidentiality is going to be your PKI, your TLS, shred bins for PII, and so on. Privacy is going to be PGP, anonymized logs to comply with data regulations, anything to keep your privacy intact. Integrity is your encrypted backups, SSL, and alarms are going to be your SIM and also your EDR. So some products or controls, some products or tools can map to multiple controls. This is something that we're working on OSSTM version 4. We're adding 5 new controls and 5 new trust properties. This is a quote from it. It's obviously a completely different way of thinking. You can get the RAV calculator and the OSSTM 3 at isecom.org. OSSTM 4 is in the works right now. We've got all the language laid out. It's just got to be put into a document and defined appropriately and spelled out. But since we're a little ahead, I've been working on a project. So we've always said for a long time that you can map OSSTM controls to any known framework that we've found so far. So I've done a little bit with NIST CSF, just as an example. So if you're familiar with it, then these are the OSSTMM controls, description, and then the NFC or NIST CSF that it fits to. So far I have mapped it to NIST CSF, PCI, CMMC. There's another one I can't remember off the top of my head. We have another guy that's really doing the more mapping, and that'll come out eventually, just so that we can, if you're bound by a certain framework or requirement, then you can map them together, so you can know from one methodology how it's fitting in your required framework. And that sums it up. Any questions? So we were trying to release it around December of last year, but then we found some issues with the new trust metrics or trust scoring. They weren't bad, but they were not perfect. They were not how we wanted to release them. So right now, I know we're shooting for the end of the year. I'm saying by February. We've got a group of people involved. I've just looped in 2 new people just because of their backgrounds to help get a complete picture. So everyone that's involved in the OSSTMM has wildly different backgrounds. Some are not even directly in security. We've got 1 doctor. That way we get everyone's view, and we're not looking at it through any specific lens, so that it makes sense to anyone that wants to apply it. And to summarize that, I guess I would say the OSSTMM is used to secure anything you want to secure. For physical sites, human security, you can use it properly for security awareness training to make sure that all the controls are covered so that everyone, back up a little bit, security awareness. What's the last time anyone has not let it play in the background and you just go and answer the questions after it's over? I've done that for the last 10 years because it's always the same crap. If you get people to understand how their work security can affect their home security and their home life. I was talking with James earlier about this, info stealers. And what I've heard from people is that's my work computer, I don't care about that. But if you're logging into Chrome at home and at work, any infected extension you get are now crossing over. So you're infecting work and home. Granted, they're probably getting it at home, but if they get it at work, now they're going to affect home. I've seen info stealers have bank accounts, backup keys for their MFA, software wallets, software wallet seeds, everything. And one thing that we should be past, but we're not, because I see this all the time, I got one in mind, pulled down this huge info stealer log. One person was a repeat offender over and over and over. I could easily fuzz his password because it was a name and then a set of 4 numbers that rotated. But I had all of them. So I could essentially build a fuzzing script with that name and then roll through a rolling code of 4 numbers and get into everything. Work accounts, home account, Uber account, you name it. I will say 4 is going to be a drastic change from 3. It's a lot more math. We're involving entropy and latency into it. And it's as much of a new way of thinking about security as 3 was when it came out. know anymore. And we do always take volunteers if everybody wants to get involved. For one, you'll get an early look at what's going on. And two, you may be able to contribute something from your different lens and experience. But we do have volunteers all over the world.
Does this also map with like HIPAA?
It does map with HIPAA. So far, we've not found any single compliance that it does not map to. So the idea behind that is you can use one methodology for all of your security and then map to the requirement that you're bound to. So that way you can cover all the bases. You don't have the puzzle pieces that kind of fit. You can close all those gaps. That way, if you're trying to secure a payment card network, you're securing your entire network, and now you potentially bridged any gaps. Some admins have a direct shot into PCI networks from their MAC address. If you hijack that machine, then most of those PCI controls are null. So that's the idea behind that. That's all I got. Unless you have any questions. Thank you.